Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to remind you of a powerful truth. You are chosen by God. You are not here by accident. You are not a mistake. You are destined for greatness, and God has a divine purpose for your life. You may feel ordinary, but let me tell you, you are extraordinary. God has planted seeds of potential within you that are waiting to grow, and no challenge, no setback, and no opposition can keep you from fulfilling your destiny. You are a masterpiece designed by the creator of the universe. No one else can fulfill your purpose like you can. It's time to embrace this calling with confidence and faith. You are uniquely crafted for a divine purpose, and your gifts, talents, and even your struggles are part of His plan. This is not just a comforting idea, it's a profound truth that should transform how you see yourself and your place in the world. From the moment you were conceived, God knew you, designed you, and set you apart. You are not an afterthought or an accident. Everything about you, your personality, your passions, your quirks, and even your imperfections was intentionally created by the one who makes no mistakes. Think about this: the same God who created the stars, who set the universe in motion, who breathed life into humanity, also took the time to design you. He placed within you a combination of abilities, dreams, and potential that no one else on this planet possesses. You are one of a kind, a masterpiece unlike any other. The Bible says you are fearfully made, and that truth should fill you with confidence and assurance. It's easy to look at others and feel inadequate. You may see someone excelling in an area where you feel weak or achieving things you haven't yet accomplished, and you start to question your worth. But comparisons are a trap. God didn't create you to be like anyone else. He gave you a unique assignment tailored to your specific gifts and circumstances. What others can do is not your concern. What you can do, what you were created to do, is where your focus should be. Sometimes you might wonder why you face certain challenges or your journey seems harder than others. The truth is, God can use even your struggles for His purpose. He sees the big picture when we can only see a small part. What feels like a setback might actually be a setup for something greater. The struggles you've endured are not wasted. They are shaping you, strengthening you, and preparing you for the next season of your life. Your scars can become a source of strength, and your pain can birth a testimony that inspires and uplifts others. Your talents and abilities are also part of this divine design. You might think your skills are ordinary, but in God's hands, they can accomplish extraordinary things. Maybe you're a great listener, someone who can comfort and encourage others. Perhaps you have a creative gift that brings joy or a mind for solving problems that others can't figure out. Whatever it is, your gifts matter. They are not random. They are tools God has given you to fulfill your purpose. When you use what He's placed in you, not only will you thrive, but you'll also bring glory to His name. Even the dreams and desires in your heart are often placed there by God. They are not just fleeting thoughts or random wishes. They are clues to your purpose. When you align those dreams with God's will, you'll find doors opening that you never expected. But it starts with recognizing that these desires are not just about you. They are about how God wants to use you for a greater good. It's important to embrace your uniqueness instead of resisting it. Too often we try to fit into molds that society or other people set for us, thinking that we need to be a certain way to be accepted or successful. But God didn't create you to blend in. He created you to stand out. Your individuality is not a flaw, it's a feature. When you stop trying to be someone else and start embracing who God made you to be, you'll find freedom, joy, and a sense of purpose like never before. Remember, God's plan for your life is bigger than what you can imagine. It's not limited by your background, your education, or your resources. He can take what seems small or insignificant and multiply it beyond your wildest dreams. All He asks is that you trust Him and step out in faith. Even when you don't feel ready, even when you're unsure of what lies ahead, know that God has already equipped you for the journey. He wouldn't have given you the dream or desire if He didn't also give you the tools to accomplish it. When you start to understand that you are uniquely crafted for a divine purpose, it changes how you approach life. You no longer have to live in fear or doubt. You don't have to wonder if you're good enough or capable enough. You can walk boldly knowing that the creator of the universe has a plan for you, a plan that only you can fulfill. God has already placed within you everything you need to overcome and succeed. This is a truth that can transform your outlook on life if you truly grasp it. So often, we look at our circumstances or ourselves and feel inadequate. We see the obstacles ahead and wonder how we're going to make it. We compare ourselves to others, wishing we had their talents, resources, or opportunities. But the reality is, God never calls you to something without first equipping you for it. He has deposited within you every gift, every skill, and every ounce of strength you need to fulfill the purpose He has designed for your life. You might not feel equipped. You might look at your own life and see all the ways you fall short. Perhaps you feel like you're not smart enough, talented enough, or confident enough to reach your goals or pursue your dreams. But God doesn't operate based on how we feel about ourselves. He sees the potential He placed within you, even if you can't see it yet. You have everything you need. It's just a matter of tapping into it, developing it, and trusting that God will help you unlock it at the right time. Sometimes what God equips us with isn't obvious. He works in ways we can't always understand. He might give you the strength to persevere in tough situations, the wisdom to make the right decisions when it matters most, or the courage to take a step of faith when you're unsure of the outcome. These gifts aren't always flashy or dramatic, but they're exactly what you need for the journey you're on. God knows what lies ahead, and He has already prepared you for it, even if you can't see how it all fits together right now. Think about the story of David in the Bible. When David faced Goliath, he didn't look like the most equipped person for the job. He wasn't a trained soldier. He didn't have the best armor or the most advanced weaponry. But David had something far more important, the skills God had already developed in him during his time as a shepherd, and the faith to trust that God would fight the battle on his behalf. David used what he had, a sling and some stones, and with God's help, he defeated a giant. That same principle applies to you. What you have right now might not seem like enough, but when God is in it, it's more than enough. It's also important to recognize that God equips us over time. You might not feel ready for certain challenges or opportunities today, but God is always preparing you. Every experience, every lesson, every trial you face is part of the process. He uses the ups and downs of life to build your character, strengthen your faith, and sharpen your skills. What feels like a setback might actually be a setup for something greater. God is always working behind the scenes, equipping you in ways you don't even realize. Another thing to remember is that God equips us uniquely. What He has placed in you is different from what He has placed in someone else. You don't have to worry about measuring up to others or trying to fit into their mold. Your gifts, your strengths, and your path are tailored specifically for you. When you stop trying to be like someone else and start embracing who God made you to be, you'll find that everything you need is already within you. Sometimes the things we think disqualify us are actually part of how God equips us. Your past mistakes, your weaknesses, and even your insecurities can become tools in God's hands. He can use your experiences to teach you empathy, to give you a testimony that inspires others, or to make you stronger in areas where you once struggled. God doesn't waste anything. Every part of your story, even the parts you wish you could erase, can be redeemed and used for His glory. The key is to trust that God knows what He's doing. You might not always feel equipped, and that's okay. Faith is about believing that God's power is made perfect in your weakness. When you rely on Him, He will guide you, strengthen you, and provide for you in ways you never imagined. It's not about what you can do on your own. It's about what God can do through you. God has already placed within you everything you need to overcome and succeed. You don't have to strive or struggle to prove yourself. You don't have to wait for the perfect circumstances or the approval of others. What you have is enough because God is with you. When you step out in faith, trusting that He has equipped you, you'll discover strengths and abilities you never knew you had. What seems like a closed door is God leading you to something greater. This is a truth that can bring comfort and clarity during times of rejection, disappointment, and uncertainty. Life doesn't always go the way we plan. And sometimes it feels like the doors we were counting on walking through slams shut right in our faces. It's easy to feel defeated, to wonder if we've done something wrong, or to question if we're good enough. But what we often fail to see in the moment is that rejection can be a form of protection and redirection, a part of God's divine plan to guide us towards something far better than we could have imagined. When a door closes, it's not the end of your story. It's simply a chapter in the greater narrative that God is writing for your life. He sees what you cannot see. He knows what's around the corner, what opportunities are waiting for you, and what dangers lie ahead. Sometimes the very thing you thought was a missed opportunity was actually God's way of steering you away from something that wasn't meant for you. That job you didn't get, that relationship that didn't work out, that dream that didn't come to pass, those closed doors are not signs of failure. They are signs of God's sovereignty and His care for you. Rejection often feels personal, but it's not about your worth or value. Just because a door closes doesn't mean you're not talented enough, smart enough, or deserving enough. It simply means that God has something different, something better in store for you. He is not in the business of leaving His children stranded. If one path is blocked, it's because He has another one prepared, a path that will lead you to greater blessings, greater growth, and greater fulfillment. But to see this, you have to trust Him, even when you don't understand what He's doing. One of the greatest challenges we face is learning to let go of what we thought we wanted. When a door closes, it's tempting to keep banging on it, to try to force it open, or to dwell on what might have been. But holding on to something that isn't part of God's plan will only keep you stuck. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is surrendering your own desires and trusting that God's plan is better than your own. Letting go isn't giving up, it's making room for what God has in store. Think about the people in the Bible who experienced closed doors. Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers and later thrown into prison for a crime he didn't commit. To the outside world, it must have looked like every door in his life had shut. But God was working behind the scenes, using those very setbacks to position Joseph for his destiny. The same is true for you. What feels like a dead end is often a divine detour, a way for God to prepare you for what's ahead. Closed doors also teach us important lessons. They help us grow in patience, resilience, and faith. They remind us that our plans are not always the best plans and that God's timing is always perfect. When a door closes, it forces us to rely on Him in ways we might not have otherwise. It's in those moments of uncertainty and waiting that we often experience the most spiritual growth. We learn to pray more fervently, to seek God's will more earnestly, and to trust Him more deeply. Sometimes we don't see the full picture until much later. What felt like rejection in the moment turns out to be a blessing in disguise. That opportunity you missed might have led you down a path that wasn't aligned with your purpose. That relationship that ended might have kept you from meeting the person who truly compliments you. That dream that didn't come true might have been too small compared to the dream God had in mind for you. His plans are always bigger, better, and more beautiful than anything we can imagine. It's also important to remember that God's no is not always a permanent no. Sometimes it's a not yet. A closed door might simply mean that the timing isn't right, that you need to grow or prepare in some way before stepping into what God has for you. Don't let a temporary setback make you give up on your calling. Trust that if God has placed a dream in your heart, He will bring it to fruition in His perfect time. Rejection is often redirection. When a door closes, it's not the end of the road, it's a signpost pointing you towards something greater. Trust that God is in control, even when things don't make sense. Let the closed doors be a reminder that His plans for you are good, that He is leading you, and that something amazing is waiting just around the corner. God's grace is greater than your mistakes. He specializes in turning messes into messages. This is a profound truth that can transform how you view your past, your failures, and your future. We've all made mistakes, choices we regret, actions we wish we'd take back, and decisions that have led to paying for ourselves or others. But the incredible thing about God is that He doesn't hold our mistakes against us. Instead, He uses them as opportunities to demonstrate His grace, love, and redemptive power in our lives. It's easy to feel disqualified because of your past. You might think, how can God use someone like me? I've messed up too much. I've made too many wrong turns. But God's grace doesn't operate on the same terms as the world's judgments. He doesn't look at you and see your failures. He looks at you and sees your potential, your purpose, and your heart. He sees the person He created you to be, and He knows that your mistakes don't define you. What defines you is His love for you and His ability to turn even the worst situations into something beautiful. The Bible is full of examples of people who made mistakes yet were still used mightily by God. Think about Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times at a critical moment. By human standards, such a betrayal might seem unforgivable. But Jesus didn't write Peter off. Instead, He restored him and entrusted him with leading the early church. Then there's Paul, who persecuted Christians before encountering Jesus and becoming one of the most influential apostles. These stories remind us that God's grace is not just enough, it's abundant. No matter how far you strayed or how big your mistakes seem, God can redeem your story. Your mistakes can actually become part of your testimony. The challenges you've faced, the wrong turns you've taken, and the lessons you've learned along the way can all be used to help others. God has a way of taking what the enemy meant for harm and turning it into good. Your mess can become your message, a source of hope and inspiration for those who are struggling with similar issues. When you share your story of how God brought you through, you give others the courage to believe that they too can overcome their challenges. God's grace also frees you from the burden of shame. Shame has a way of keeping us stuck, making us feel unworthy and incapable of moving forward. But God doesn't want you to live in shame. His grace washes over you, cleansing you and giving you a fresh start. When you accept His forgiveness, you are no longer defined by what you've done. You are defined by what He has done for you. You are a new creation in Christ, and His mercies are new every morning. Each day is an opportunity to begin again, to step into the fullness of His plan for your life. It's important to understand that God's grace doesn't mean there are no consequences for our actions. Mistakes often come with lessons that we need to learn, and those lessons are part of God's refining process. He uses the consequences not to punish us, but to shape us, to mold us into the people He created us to be. It's in those moments of struggle and reflection that we often draw closer to Him, leaning on His strength and wisdom to guide us forward. God's grace also empowers you to forgive yourself. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself. You replay your mistakes in your mind, wishing you could go back and do things differently. But holding on to that guilt doesn't change the past. It only robs you of the present and the future. When God forgives you, he wipes the slate clean. If he, the creator of the universe, is willing to let go of your mistakes, then you can too. Forgiving yourself is not about excusing your actions, but about accepting God's forgiveness and allowing his grace to transform you. One of the most amazing aspects of God's grace is that it not only redeems your past, but also equips you for the future. Your mistakes don't disqualify you from God's plans. In fact, they often prepare you for the purpose he has for you. The experiences you've gone through, even the painful ones, give you wisdom, empathy, and a deeper understanding of God's love. They make you stronger and more resilient, better equipped to fulfill your calling and to help others along the way. God specializes in redemption. He doesn't just fix broken things, he makes them new. He takes the pieces of your life that feel shattered and creates something even more beautiful than before. His grace is not just a safety net for when we fall. It's a foundation that allows us to rise again, stronger and more determined than ever. When you believe in God's plan for your life, you give him room to work miracles. Faith is the key that unlocks the doors of possibility, allowing God to move in ways that go beyond human understanding. It is the confidence to trust in what you cannot see and the assurance that no matter how uncertain your circumstances may seem, God is in control. Faith doesn't mean you ignore reality or pretend that challenges don't exist. It means you choose to believe that God's power and his promises are greater than anything you face. Faith begins with a decision. It's a choice to trust God, even when everything around you says otherwise. There are moments in life when it feels like the odds are stacked against you, when fear and doubt creep in, whispering that it's impossible. But faith chooses to listen to God's voice instead, the voice that says all things are possible for those who believe. Faith doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It steps out even when the path isn't clear, knowing that God will make a way. Faith isn't just a passive belief, it's an active posture. It's praying with expectation, acting with conviction, and standing firm in the face of uncertainty. When you have faith, you position yourself to receive the blessings God has in store for you. You're not trying to force things to happen in your own strength. Instead, you're trusting that God will bring his plans to pass in his perfect timing. Faith isn't about understanding every detail of the journey. It's about trusting the one who holds your journey in his hands. The Bible is filled with examples of ordinary people who witness extraordinary miracles because of their faith. Think of Moses, who stood before the Red Sea with the Egyptian army behind him. There was no logical way out, but Moses trusted God and obeyed his command to stretch out his staff. The waters parted, and the Israelites walked through on dry ground. Or consider the woman with the issue of blood who had been suffering for 12 years. She believed that if she could just touch the hem of Jesus' garment, she would be healed, and her faith made her whole. These stories remind us that faith isn't about what we can do. It's about what God can do when we trust him. Faith also sustains you in the waiting. Sometimes believing in God's plan means holding on to hope when nothing seems to be happening. It's trusting that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating things for your good, even when you can't see the evidence yet. Waiting can be difficult, especially when the delay feels endless, but faith keeps you grounded. It reminds you that God's timing is perfect and that he never forgets his promises. Every delay has a purpose, whether it's to prepare you to align circumstances or to strengthen your trust in him. Doubt is a natural part of the human experience, and it often tries to challenge your faith. There will be times when you question if God is really listening or if his promises are still true. But faith isn't the absence of doubt. It's choosing to trust God despite your doubts. It's acknowledging your fears and uncertainties while holding on to the truth of his word. Faith doesn't demand perfect confidence. It simply requires a willingness to take the next step, trusting that God will meet you there. Faith also requires letting go of control. One of the biggest obstacles to faith is the desire to manage every detail of your life. We often think that if we can just work harder, plan better, or fix things ourselves, everything will turn out the way we want. But true faith means surrendering your plans to God and allowing him to lead. It's saying, Lord, I trust you more than I trust myself. I believe that your ways are higher and better than mine. When you release control, you create space for God to move in ways that exceed your expectations. Another important aspect of faith is gratitude. When you believe in God's plan, you start to see his hand at work in the small details of your life. You recognize blessings you might have overlooked before, and you thank him not just for what he's already done, but for what he's going to do. Gratitude fuels your faith, reminding you of God's faithfulness and encouraging you to trust him for even greater things. Faith doesn't mean life will always be easy. Challenges will come, and there will be moments when you feel stretched to your limit. But faith gives you the strength to persevere, the courage to keep going, and the assurance that God is with you every step of the way. It's the anchor that holds you steady in the storm, the light that guides you through the darkness, and the foundation that keeps you standing when everything else feels uncertain. When you believe in God's plan for your life, you position yourself to experience His power in ways that are far beyond anything you could imagine. You are not here by accident. You are divinely placed and purposed. Every moment of your life, every twist, every turn, every triumph, and even every setback is part of a greater plan. There is a reason for your existence, and that reason is rooted in a purpose far greater than you can fully comprehend. You may sometimes wonder why you are where you are, or question the significance of your life. But let me tell you, there are no coincidences with God. He has meticulously crafted your path, aligning every detail to fulfill His perfect plan for you. Before you were born, God knew you. He saw your future, your potential, and the impact you would have on this world. The Bible says He knit you together in your mother's womb, meaning that every aspect of your being, your personality, your talents, and even your quirks was designed with intention. Nothing about you is random. You are here because God wanted you to be here, in this time, in this place, for a reason that only He fully understands. You are His masterpiece, uniquely created to fulfill a specific purpose that no one else can fulfill. Sometimes life can make it hard to believe this. The challenges, the disappointments, and the setbacks can cloud our sense of purpose. You may feel overlooked, insignificant, or stuck in circumstances that seem far from divine. But God's plans are not thwarted by the difficulties you face. In fact, those very difficulties often serve a greater purpose. They refine you, strengthen you, and prepare you for the calling God has placed on your life. The challenges you endure are not evidence of God's absence. They are proof of His presence working in you and through you to accomplish something extraordinary. Think about the story of Esther in the Bible. She was an ordinary young woman who found herself in an extraordinary position as queen. When her people faced destruction, she had a choice to make: stay silent and protect herself, or step out in faith and risk everything to save them. Her cousin Mordecai reminded her, who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this? That same truth applies to you. You are where you are for a reason. It may not always be clear to you, but God has placed you exactly where you need to be to fulfill His purpose. God's placement in your life extends to the people around you, the opportunities you encounter, and even the obstacles you face. Nothing is wasted in His plan. The relationships you form, the jobs you take, the places you go, all of these are threads in the tapestry of your life, woven together by the master designer. Sometimes what seems like a detour or delay is actually God's way of positioning you for something greater. He is always at work, orchestrating the details of your life in ways you can't yet see. One of the most powerful aspects of being divinely placed is the realization that your purpose is not just about you. God has placed you here not only for your own growth and fulfillment, but also to impact the lives of others. Your kindness, your encouragement, your willingness to serve, all of these can ripple out and touch people in ways you might never fully understand. You may not see the fruits of your actions immediately, but every small act of love and faithfulness has the potential to create lasting change. God is using you, even in ways you don't realize, to be a light in the lives of those around you. It's also important to remember that your purpose is ongoing. God's plan for you isn't limited to one moment or one achievement. It's a journey, a series of steps that unfold over time. You may not always know where the next step will lead, but that's where faith comes in. Trust that God is guiding you, even when the path seems unclear. Trust that He is opening the right doors, closing the wrong ones, and leading you toward the destiny He has prepared for you. You might feel like you're not ready, like you don't have what it takes to fulfill your purpose. But God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. He equips you with everything you need to succeed, even when you feel inadequate. Your weaknesses, your fears, and your doubts are not obstacles to Him. They're opportunities for Him to show His strength and His faithfulness in your life. When you step out in obedience, even when you're unsure, God meets you with power and provision. Being divinely placed also means trusting God's timing. You may feel like you're waiting for something to happen, like your life is on hold. But God is never late, and His timing is always perfect. While you're waiting, He is working. He is preparing you, shaping you, and positioning you for the next chapter of your journey. The waiting season is not wasted. It's part of the process. Trust that when the time is right, God will reveal His purpose and His plan in a way that exceeds your expectations. In conclusion, remember that you are chosen by God, uniquely created and divinely placed for a purpose far greater than you can imagine. Trust His plan, even when the path seems uncertain. And know that He is using every moment, every joy, every challenge, every tour to shape you into who you're meant to be. Walk boldly in faith, believing that His grace is sufficient, His timing is perfect, and His purpose for your life will always prevail. You are not here by accident. You are here because God has an extraordinary plan for you.